You're in the colonies.
Yeah, right. So he uses his own sperm in his half-sister Ninursaginana and produces the first fertile female, Eve. Now, we need to know what the word Adam and Eve actually mean.
Whose sperm? Enki's sperm?
Enki's own sperm. He used his own sperm, absolutely.
To
inseminate his half-sister, in whom he had put an egg from a Cro-Magnon.
Okay.
Yeah. As a genetic engineer, I mean, at Dolly the sheep's laboratory, Enki would be regarded as a klutz. Okay? Just about as klutzy as those people there, so it all sort of fits. So Adam and Eve, Adam meant donkey or Borg or slave, literally made by the Anunnaki, Man. Made by Anunnaki. Adamic means red race, and the original word for them was Tak Adama, which means the red race created as from the Tak. Tak means Orion. Al-Natak, Mintaka, Hurtak, Ur-Tak. Ur means dragon from Tak means Orion. H breathed from Hurtak. Breathed from the dragons of Orion.
So I got where the first Eve came from, but where did the first Adam come from?
So the story of the split rib is actually a genetic operation. It's a cloning function.
Oh, so Adam and Eve are clones.
I suspect that there's controversy on that one, but I don't think the division
It can't
was...
be a clone if one's male and one's female.
It was definitely inbreeding. And Eve's rib, many people interpret to be a genetic engineering story where the rib is actually a haploid DNA. But I don't have a real answer to that question. But clearly, even the Adam and Eve story together is really racial. It's not a story of individuals so much. Just like the story of later in this story, we're coming to it very quickly anyway, the story of Ab, Ra, Am. Ra means sun god, which originally was Enki, and then later Enlil tried to take it over. So Abraham is a name for Enki. And Abraham begat with Sarah, which is Asa of Ra. Sarah, the Asa, dragon queen of Ra. And begats the whole Benjaminic lineage. So, and they came from the city Ur. You see? So this story, which biblically has been interpreted as the names of people, is actually the names of races. And many historians have now concluded that, and I think that's somewhat relevant here as well. This is a description of racial roots rather than individual persons so much, and needs to be interpreted as such.
So in other words, in a way, they were growing in semi-vats races.
That this was a explicit attempt. It's like different versions of Bill Gates software, yes. That this is Enki trying to discover how to make the software work.
And so it keeps on rebooting itself all the time.
Exactly, and requires inbreeding to keep the shape-shifting capability. So now, the next part of this story would be basically all the different examples we have of what the bloodline Enki means. Now, here's the different names. Enki went by the word Ea, by the word Atun, by the word Enki, by the word Adonai, and later we have the words Poseidon and the Zeus story, whereas and it actually became called Lucifer. And later it became the word Baal, as in Beelzebub and Baalbek. And then it became the word Bo, as in Boheme and Bulgaria. So this side of the family had lots of names, many cultures. And this side of the family, Enlil, in Egypt, was called Amun. The Amun-Ra is in our word Amen. And these are the ones who murdered Akhenaten. And then Yahweh, and Michael. So you have the Michaelic versus the Luciferic, and also the word Ahrimanic in the Steiner terminology, Ahriman. The Ahrimans like computers, the Lucifers don't.
Arian.
Pardon?
Arion.
Yeah, and very good. And the word Orion, Orion, and Arian. We know what the word on means. The word on means sun god. Ori means you have golden radiance in your aura. Fractality in the charge radiance. Orion. So an Orion, Arion, Orion is one who has radiant, implosive, a gold mane on the lion. Yeah, we were talking last night. The star elders of these Anunnaki were called the Leonines, the Sekhmet, the secret places of the lion, the Kathmandu, the Sphinx, the lion gods.
Dan, would you comment on the difference in the suffix between "an" versus "al"? North American, Indian versus Oriental.
The term El and Al mostly, well, for example, if you were to describe what happens to charge in DNA that does get a soul, it's a translation of vorticity such that the charge goes from the circle to the line. And the drawing of that is an L. So those who are able to make the L or phase shift are the ones who can translate their velocity and memory through the speed of light. For example, step on top of the Moxine light, the quartz cube in secret places of the Andes, and you appear to vaporize. If you're a Tron, you can take your memory with you through the speed of light. That is an L, as in Elohim. Yeah? Now, if we look at the shape of Alpha Draconis, we have some pictures, but the shape of the Alpha Draconis is actually the Arabic letter L. And the central star is Arrakis, which is Dune.
And Elnaton?
Elnaton.
Or Eltonin, pardon me?
Yeah, Eltonin.
And the Eltonin antenna?
So this is all a name for those who... Now, originally L was a name for those who could do it. Later, L became a name for those who were wannabes. We think we ought to be able to, but... So the Elohim later came to describe those who would like to, but they really were having some trouble getting it up to speed there. So this becomes a clue then for describing various groups in history. Now let's track this bloodline. Remember, what we have here is a secret and dangerous attempt to breed a bloodline that could re-inhabit stars. That is a political hot potato back up here. Political hot potato. Empire could strike back any time. We're not sure we want this DNA getting out of here because it's powerful, it's dangerous, and it's in quarantine. Terminator's coming. So this becomes the story of trying to hide this bloodline through history, basically. And what we want to do now is track the story of that bloodline in virtually all major cultures of planet Earth. Remember we said in Australia you have snake god versus dolphin god. So in Australia he's called the dolphin god, right? In South Africa he's called Kiliman Jaro. It's Enki. Credo Mutwa explained that to us. He was very helpful. And in Egypt, remember we've got the Atun versus the Amun. So, well, first we got to deal with Atlantis. So, in the descendants of Enki, his son was called Ningishida in Sumerian. Ningishida, spelled many ways. And in English, this became Thoth. And Thoth was called TWT, which means Tahuti, which in the Bible is spelled DWD, David. So everywhere in the Bible where you read the lineage of David, it means the lineage of Thoth. This is from the academic work of Ahmed Osman, Out of Egypt and House of the Messiah. And later Hermes, when it became Egyptian. But at the time of Atlantis, Thoth Ningishida and his father Enki had designed an electrical environment to save a gene pool called Atlatl, otherwise known as Thule. Thule basically means Enki's experiment, Thoth's experiment, which was the early name for Atlantis. And Atlatl here means, if you check the indigenous use of the term, it means projectile. And literally, if you go to the Native Americans of the American West, an Atlatl is a javelin. And you remember the pictures we have of Atlantis and Amsterdam, that's a concentric rings of water and land, which is how you fabricate a recursive capacitor. It's a projectile. It's a way for taking the charge field of a collective genome and projecting it into stars. Yeah? So, but Atlantis is only one of numerous millennial attempts to try to create a haven for a gene pool that could get psychoactive. Another example is the book Holy Grail Across the Atlantic, or just the Holy Grail story in general, which is the attempt to shepherd and harbor and hide a gene pool that could get psychokinetic. A short version then of the Atlantis story is, in the late stages of that culture, they were using a technology from Sirius A, which was a 6 and 8-sided quartz cylinder suspended in a vacuum and sonically triggered to implode to get voltage from gravity, called fire crystal or tuoison. Tuoa.